Okie dokie, we have this video lesson here on dividing. Let's rewind that for a second and start over again. This video lesson is going to be on dividing polynomials, and we're going to use long division to do that. Let's take a trip back in time on the magic school bus that's going to take us there to elementary school. I hope they're teaching you this in elementary school, because if you know how to do long division using this, it should kind of help you out a little bit on dividing polynomials using long division. If we look here, we take this 8 goes into 9 how many times? Well, 8 goes into 9 once, and then we will say 1 times 8 will give us 8. Once we do that, we are now subtracting. What is 9 minus 8? Well, that is 1. Once we are to this point, this 8 comes down, and now we have 18 we're dealing with. Well, how many times does our 8 go into 18? Well, in this case, twice. 2 times 8 should be 16. And just like we did in the step above, we are subtracting here. What's 18 minus 16? 2. Bring the 5 down. How many times is 8 going to 25? 3 times. 3 times 8. 3 times 8. 24. And once we are to this point, same step. You notice we're going through the same process. We subtract. 25 minus 24 is 1. Drop the 3 down. And you notice how this is always been the same process. How many times is 8 going to 13? Once. 1 times 8 is 8. Give me a little more page here. 1 times 8 is 8, and then subtract. Leaves us with 5. And so if we were to have 9,853 divided by 8, that would equal this number here. And our remainder, what was our remainder down here? 5. So we will say 9,853 divided by 8 will give us 1,231 and 5/8. These 8s right here come from the same place. They were both in the denominator. So let's just kind of refresh your memory there on your trip back to whenever you learned this. This same process is going to be used when we have problems like this.
Mark Ryder, would you come to the high school office, please? Mark Ryder.
The same process will be used when you work with problems like this. When we divide, we have a polynomial divided by another polynomial. And so when it says divided by, this part right here is like your fraction bar. So since this is on the bottom, it will go on the outside of your long division. This is the numerator, so it will go on the inside. Now, I've already had a small error in judgment right there, because if you look at this looks normal, right? And you're going to make mistakes like this too. That's why you need to slow down and look at what's going on. Look at my exponents. 4th power, 3rd power, that is not the 2nd power. they're supposed to go in order. They're supposed to have, in this spot, we're supposed to have a second power. So you don't see one in the problem up here, but there's one in there. You see we have second power. And that is one thing that will trip you up a little bit if you get in a hurry or even you just plain forget. And then here's the first power, and then here's to the 0 power. And so we have every power from the highest down to the lowest. All right, so now what we do is we really only need to look at this part here to figure out how many times does x squared go into x to the 4th. How many times does x squared go into x to the 4th? Take 2 out here, take 2 out here, x squared. So x squared goes into x to the 4th, x squared number of times. And you notice how since this was squared, I'm putting it right above the squared term in the polynomial. All right, so now we go and multiply. Now we're going to take x squared, multiply it by x squared, and then we're also going to multiply it by 1. So x squared times x squared should give us x to the 4th, and we put it below x to the 4th because we want to combine like terms. On the next step, we're actually subtracting like terms. And then x squared times 1, that would be x squared. That's a positive x squared. And you notice how I put it below the x squared. We need to keep like terms lined up. Now, just like in the from elementary school when doing long division with numbers, we are also subtracting here. X to the 4th minus x to the 4th should leave us 0x to the 4th, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to cancel out that x to the 4th. Negative 3x cubed, there's nothing that we are subtracting from it. And then if we have 0x squared minus 1x squared, and that's what we have. And you notice we are supposed to drop down negative 2x. Okay. Once again, look at x squared. How many times does x squared go into negative 3x cubed? Negative 3x cubed. How many times does x squared go into it? Well, we cross off 2 x's there and cross off 2 of them here. That was 3, so then that leaves us with a 1. Negative 3x is what's left over when we divide. All right. Next step, let's take this negative 3x, and multiply it by both of those terms. Negative 3x times x squared should give us negative 3x cubed. And negative 3x times 1 should give us negative 3x. We are supposed to subtract. And now that we have negative signs down here, this is kind of where if you subtract a negative, it becomes positive. And if you subtract a negative, it becomes positive. So we're really adding here. And you just got to pay attention. If you are subtracting a negative, that's when you do the addition. These cancel out. We're left with negative x squared. And then negative 2x plus 3x should be a positive 1x. We need to drop down 1. It's positive 1, so we'll drop it down. Hey, who's the wise guy that cut off the 3? All right, there we go. All right, moving right along, we are looking at we're looking at x squared going into negative x squared. So if we have negative x squared, how many times does x squared go into it? X squared and x squared cancel off. We still have the negative sign, so what is left over? Negative 1. So there's negative 1. And now we take negative 1, multiply it by x squared, multiply it by positive 1. Negative 1 times x squared should give us negative x squared. And negative 1 times positive 1 should give us negative 1. Remember, we are subtracting here. So since we're subtracting, that becomes a plus, and this one also becomes a plus. And now let's go ahead and put these together. Negative x squared plus x squared, those cancel each other out, leaving us with positive x plus 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we need to take this part right here. We're going to write out of our answer. Since we have a remainder, we need to write out our answer as it was x squared minus 3x, and I'm pretty sure it was a minus 1. Let me look again. X squared minus 3x minus 1. Yes. Now, our remainder, we're going to say plus x plus 2. Remember, it is part of a fraction, so we're going to put it in a fraction. Which one was the denominator? The denominator was right up there, x squared plus 1. And so we're now finished. And essentially what you're doing is if you take x squared, multiply it by x squared minus 3x minus 1, and then you add x plus 2 to it, you will be getting x to the 4th minus 3x cubed minus 2x plus 1. That's what you get. Okay, I have one more slide here with an example. Let's see if you can hit pause the video and then hit play and then check your solution with mine. Make sure they match up. I will try to work this one out here so that way you can know what's going on if you need some help. If we look, the division sign is like our fraction bar. So that means that this is the denominator. So it will go outside of the long division. And the numerator is this polynomial. And this is where we're at. How many times does x go into x squared? How many times does x go into x squared? Cross that off to become 1. Cross that off. There's nothing down there. Actually, there's an invisible 1 down there. And so x is what's left over. This is x squared, so x will not go above it. This is x, so x goes above that one. And now multiply. X times x and x times 2. X times x is x squared, and x times 2 is a positive 2x. Remember that we are subtracting. So if you want, this becomes a plus, this becomes a negative, and this one also becomes a negative. I just changed the signs there so that way it's like distributing that negative sign to everything inside the parentheses. X squared plus negative x squared cancels out. Negative 2x plus negative 2x is negative 4x. And 6 plus, 6 gets dropped down. Okay, so now we look, we have x going into negative 4x how many times? Negative 4x divided by x cancels and cancels, leaving us with negative 4. And now multiply. Negative 4 times x, and negative 4 times positive 2. And let's subtract. Let's make this a plus, make that opposite sign, and make that an opposite sign. Negative 4 plus 4x cancels, and 6 plus 8 makes 14. We're at the very end. We're at the very end right here. There's nothing else to drop down. So our solution, when we divide those out, we're going to get x minus 4 plus, and then what's the fraction we have? 14 is the remainder. X plus 2 is the denominator. And that is how you work a long division of polynomials. Alrighty, I know you're supercharged about that one and you're excited to practice some of those on your own, so let me know if you have any questions.